I'm Matt Valley. Welcome to episode number 152 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the insights and analytics pros that you trust. All right, so today's guest I met recently at the Green Book IIEX conference in Washington, D.C. It happened to be at a Market Research Council happy hour. Shout out to Katrina Noel, who gave me the invite, because I ended up meeting Robert Pierson. We chatted about everything under the sun, it feels like. Robert is definitely not the orange where you peel a single layer and you get to the juice. Robert is definitely more of an onion. You just keep peeling, and there's so many layers. We covered lots of stuff. So we talked about his current role with Rigour Research as Senior Vice President of North America, a new role. Also, his role at 451 Research, which originally bought his company Tech Touchstone, relocated Robert to the United States, first of all in San Francisco and now in Chicago, but also lots of interesting things in between. He is currently the board member of the British American Business Council in Chicago. But he's been involved in Polo in Chicago, crazy enough, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But also way back, he got to start organizing large-scale international events, which is to say raves. So how does that lead to insights? Well, we're going to talk about all that and more in today's podcast. So welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, very excited to have you. It felt like a natural as we were talking and talking. Actually, I wanted the conversation to keep going. So, what better way to do that than to have you on the podcast so we can dig into some of this stuff? So, all right. So, your background is really fascinating. You've done all kinds of stuff. Why don't you take us all the way back to the beginning, how you first got into this space, and bring us up to the present day? What's the story?
Yeah, so my initial kind of foray that got me associated with research was at Tech Touchstone. We used to run small events for CIOs making decisions about what they were going to buy, what new technologies. This is the time of cloud computing and things like that.
Sure.
Tech Touchstone was sold to 451 Research not long after that. And it was on the same day that Yankee Group was sold. So I turned up in an office, and someone rather familiar to both of us, Reed Cundiff, was in that office, having just sold Yankee Group. It was we were standing in the office because we weren't told that the transactions had taken place on the same day. And it was like, who the hell are you? And so we sat there and we had a chat, and it was really fun and kind of got to know each other. Reed then did what Reed tends to do, which is as soon as the transaction had taken place, he then disappeared off for a year and reappeared at Microsoft. As a technology analysis firm, Microsoft were obviously a big client of ours. And so I remained friends with Reed for very many years. At 451 Research, I was running their events business for them and realized that being the ugly little sister of the research business, I was never going to make as much money, even leading that business, as I could do in research. So I came across a professor, a gentleman called Charles von Brunn, at Wharton. And Charles had worked with Case von Riel to create an algorithm to measure reputation using quantitative research methods. And so I was absolutely enthralled by this. And so much so that not long after that, I took over as head of North America for them and ran their sales business for them. It was very exciting time. We were talking to every major corporation in the US. It took me across all of the US and Canada. So I really got to know the US and all 50 states and some parts of Canada that I've never been back to since. And even one of my most exciting stories I have from that period of time was I got a call from airports to Montreal.
Okay.
And they said, we want to know what our reputation is. So I said, you're the last captive retail environment in Canada. We really need to have a chat and work out how you can utilize this in order to be more successful. So
Sure.
I arrived at the airport in Montreal and was stopped at security. And the security guard said, where are you going? And I said, I'm going up to that office up there. And he said, who are you seeing? I said, the Director General of the Airports to Montreal. And he just said, go. And so that was that. But there was lots of experiences like that that happened over time. But what was really interesting was understanding the underlying attributes and drivers of reputation for these organizations and really where that applied across different methodologies. Um, so long story short, I then moved on from there. Um, and took a year out of research. And the day my non-compete came to an end, I got a call from Reed. So, like, this was taking me 13 years back. And
Right.
Reed said, do you want to lead one of our research businesses at Kantar? And he said, do you want to do syndicated or do you want to do custom research? I said custom research. So I then met with Jennifer, who was the CEO of Profiles Americas at the time, and took over as the head of business development over there.
Nice.
Had a really exciting time because we had to do things like rebuilding the CRM system because no CRM system is designed for data collection.
Yeah.
I created a white space map to really understand how enterprises buy research and particularly quantitative research. And so did that. We were very successful. We grew the business by about 40%. And yeah, then just carried on going. And then Borderless Access headhunted me to take over their America's business for them to do the same. Did some really interesting projects for them and hired a good team of people. And then I got this opportunity come up from Rigour at the beginning of this year. And as you mentioned earlier on, I sit on the British American Business Council, and our job on the British American Business Council is to get British companies to do business in America and American companies to do business in the UK. And
Right.
so it fitted really well with my narrative. Rigour is doing some really interesting things right now. So we've just created a new tool for measuring engagement of respondents in surveys. We tried out lots of different ways of doing that. And there's a lot of conversation in the industry about fraud, right? And everybody's talking about, well, it's getting rid of the bots. Yes, and so there is a thing of getting rid of bots in surveys, but the real problem we've got with all surveys right now, and you can see this with the vast changes in terms of people using multiple different survey providers in order to complete a very simple survey.
Right.
It comes down to engagement. So this tool measures the engagements of respondents and can change the questions in real time in order to keep them engaged, and it measures keystrokes and things like that.
Yeah.
And so that is a huge, for me, when I started talking to Cornelius, the CEO of Rigour, about coming on board, that was a huge thing. We shared that in common, that frustration that you've had. I mean, I had to stop using a certain data collection provider when I was at Reputation Institute because I couldn't do data regressions. It would frustrate the hell out of me. And because it wasn't because the data was bad, it was because they were using different sources in order to get it. So you could never tell what was happening at what point in time because you're essentially talking to different people in different places. I'm sorry, I've talked a lot. So I'll let you get back to the podcast. But yeah, that takes me up to the present day in terms of where I'm at. So now I am working for Rigour Research, who are a full service data collection and analytics company, headquartered in the UK with offices in Australia. And now we have an office in Chicago and an office in New York, and doing really good stuff for consultancies and market research agencies. And we recently did some work from Bloomberg, talking to CFOs about their ability to invest in the Middle East and what their feeling was, given that what's happening in Iran right now.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, it was very positive about that they were going to continue to invest, and actually they were getting some good deals out of it. So um, that's it. So I'll let you ask more questions because I've gone on like a pipe waste as I tend to do.
Yeah, cool. No, this is great stuff. Great stuff. And we'll get back to insights in a second, but just a couple things I want to ask about. First of all, where the heck does Polo come in? And second of all, tell me about that very early start to your, call it a career.
Right.
Uh, Tell us about your rave days.
So the Polo story came about was so when I left Reputation Institute, or what's now the Rep Track company,
Yeah, right.
um, I took a year to kind of focus on myself and work out what I was going to do next. And I was also in a non-compete. So I ran the Chicago Beach Polo Cup with a friend of mine on North Avenue Beach. So we got teams from all over the world to play an international championship. And I think the biggest complaint was that it was a very short turnaround. So if you were riding at 30 or 40 miles an hour, it's kind of scary. Now, at this point, I hadn't ridden a horse in probably 20 years, maybe 25 years at the time.
Yeah.
Um, but I met a load of these polo guys, and we went for a few drinks. And after the match took place, we never repeated the Chicago Beach Polo Cup again. But I stayed in contact with a couple of the guys, and one of them just kept bugging me. And he's like, "You got to play." He's like, you will love it. Now I have a cousin who's a professional polo player. She runs Singapore Ladies. And I phoned her up and she said, "Don't do it." And she said, "It's too expensive. You're going to get addicted and you're never going to ever want to stop." Um, and at the time, just after I started at Kantar, I had a rather large team that reported to me. And I was just on call the whole time. So they opened a polo school behind my house. And so I got this phone call and they said, "Oh, you got to try this now." And that's what, ever since I've been playing ever since. My cousin was completely right. It is very expensive. It is completely addictive, but it's a healthy way to learn. And it is one of those sports where you're part of a team, but you're independent. And it kind of comes back into the whole thing of kind of being part of a greater unit in order to achieve your goals. But it's
Sure.
also a great way to get frustration out, right? So one of my friends always said, even if you miss the ball, riding a horse at 30 miles an hour down a 4 acre field is a buzz in itself. And I totally agree with that. So it's good stress relief, but it's also a good way to kind of disconnect from the day-to-day issues of life.
Yeah,
Um,
amazing.
yeah, in terms of my techno stuff, yeah, that's a very, very long time ago. So in the mid 90s, I went to India and I came back and bumped into some friends. And this was about the time that the Shaman were around. And um, electronic music was kind of getting to the forefront. And we started a club night on a Thursday night in Heaven in London, and then moved it to the Fridge in Brixton, which no longer exists.
Yeah.
And we would have started off with about 300 people attending. And then by the end of it, when I stopped doing it because I moved to Australia in 2000, we had about 3,000 people coming every week. And we launched some major techno people in London, like Tiesto. So it was a well-oiled machine, right? So we had dancers, we had an affiliation that we built with what was then Circus Spaces called the Circus University. So we had trapeze artists, we had fire jugglers, we had all these other things. So it was a full performance on top of that.
Yeah.
And it was very much an environment where everybody from all walks of life was accepted. Um,
Yep.
at the main, Adding to this at the same time, I was also working in a bank at the time doing risk management in the daytime in one of my early jobs. So my daytime life was very boring and banking. Um, my banking friends out there would probably not like me to say that, but my evenings and weekends were focused on running this club with a group of very, very fun people who, to this
Yeah.
day, I'm still friends with, but they were all intellectuals, and some of them worked in research at the time as well, and some of them worked in other areas. So it's very interesting kind of to see where all those people are in the present day and what we're like. So, but as I
Yeah.
said, it's a very long time ago.
What's also really interesting is that at that time you had your day job and then you had your passion at night, right?
Right.
Um, Now sitting here today, it wasn't banking that ended up to be the career that won out. It's
No.
taking that passion and the skills that you learned from that ultimately became where your career headed. So it's kind
Well,
of
it's understand. It was about understanding people and what drives them, right?
right.
And realistically, in research, that's what we do. We're looking at what people like, what they hate, and we're statistically measuring that. And we're
Yeah.
looking at what are the attributes, what are the drivers of those people. We're really like getting to the core of things in terms of where things are happening. And then with what's going on right now with the rise of artificial intelligence in research, trying to replicate some of the manual models that we learned when we were in college and going back into and currently use, and coming out with statistical anomalies that really don't work, and some that do. I think it's a really exciting time to be in research. It's a really exciting time. Like, I don't know if you saw this week that with Publicis buying out one of the connected data players.
Yeah,
Um,
library. Yeah, I did see that.
so it's like the industry's in a really interesting place right now. One of the biggest challenges that we've got that's come out of AI, which ironically has made us faster but less accurate, is 70% acceptance for inaccuracies in data, which has come about. So the challenge that we've got with things like artificial intelligence right now is researchers can think outside the box, and traditional research methodologies and data collection are very important to put alongside these tools. So,
Sure.
in my mind, things like synthetic data and the future, as it sits in the future of research, sits hand in hand. You've got passive data sources which it can use. It can do certain different things. I was talking to a friend of mine today. She's an archaeologist, and she said that she put her paper in to see whether AI could look at it and see what it came out with, and
Sure.
it identified it as being artificial intelligence. And she said I wrote it myself, and she said that's very scary in terms of the fault tools in terms of seeing whether an AI wrote it or not.
Yeah.
So it's like I think we're in such an interesting time at the beginning of everything in terms of how things are going to work, and algorithmically, we're in our infancy. In research terms, model data has existed since probably the 1780s.
Sure.
So it's different ways of modeling faster. So I think we're in a situation right now in the research industry where we really have to understand how to use these tools to be more effective. It's definitely making us faster and more efficient in certain ways. But at the end of the day, if our clients aren't able to do predictive modeling based around understanding active data and getting responses from people, I think we're not in a very good situation. Um,
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you had mentioned at the start you were talking about essentially data quality, right?
yeah.
And the stuff that Rigour Research is doing. How does that maybe play into what the future looks like as well?
So in terms of Rigour is a traditional field and tab organization,
Okay,
right? We do very good data collection. Our focus has always been on making sure that we can, like, if you want to talk to respondents, you should be able to talk to them twice. You should be able to validate what you're saying in terms of doing this. One of the
right.
challenges that we've had for certain providers is that we can't do that because again, they're not sourcing their own sample, and therefore it makes it difficult. So we've made a conscious decision not to own our own panels. But this has led to higher quality focus on data. We're very good at stat analysis, like Kano analysis, for example, in terms of preferences.
Sure.
We've done a recently we created a data conjoint tool, which is for shelf testing. So you can make in shelf testing choices and change from one product to another very easily in order to do that. And that helps in terms of product selection and seeing where people are actually making their true decisions. So we do
Mhm.
things like that. From an analytical standpoint, we're able to display dashboards for people where they don't necessarily want to have a 25-page or 60-page research report that
Right.
allows them to see things. And we've made a business out of that, which has been very successful in the UK, particularly working with small and mid-sized players, but also working with some of the larger players because we can do offline interviews and things like that in order to support that. So
Sure.
I think we're in a very successful position in terms of how we can engage people to help them to do that. And particularly for some of you smaller players that are out in the industry, if you need support from and excuse the plug, but if you need support from somebody that can help you with your research projects to get to the right people, whether it's B2B consumer or other audiences, then please come over and talk to me, and I'll be happy to talk through what we can do and how we can support you. But I think, big shout out to Jim Whaley, who wrote a piece the other day about the small players that are supporting our industry.
Yeah.
The big players are out there, and as an ex leader from Kantar, I support everything they do. I think they're amazing organizations that just keep the industry moving forward. But the small, innovative, agile companies are those that we can really rely on ourselves to really help to make things work and help to make those changes because we have to innovate in order to survive. And that innovation is leading to better quality sample, better quality environments, and generally interesting people that you meet throughout the industry. And it's
Yeah.
a lot of the big players have borne us into these smaller organizations. So I think that's also the other thing to bear in mind is we don't sit independent. We're interdependent on the whole ecosystem of market research.
Yeah, absolutely true. That's absolutely true and very well said. So here, here. Cool, good stuff. So Robert, this is a podcast, right? A podcast is media.
Yeah,
So I'm interested to know, you're a busy guy, you got a big job and you're playing polo and you have a long commute, all that stuff.
yeah.
So what media is winning your attention nowadays for insight, inspiration, or enjoyment? Big broad question.
So I look at a lot of different areas in terms of media. Years and years ago, one of my jobs was working for the Financial Times. And part of our job when we came into the organization was every day we were given a copy of the Financial Times and we had to read it before we started work.
Yeah,
And so I've kind of kept with that method in terms of when I get up at 5:45 in the morning, I'll quickly scan articles from industry journals, MRII. I might listen to some podcasts and on the long commute, as you mentioned.
sure.
Um, I will. I'm a sponge for information. I like one of my favorite podcasts to listen to is Hannah Fry from the UK, who is a mathematician from East London,
Okay.
who she became famous because she created an algorithm that measured statistically how you could gain your partner, and she used that in order to get her husband. Um,
It's awesome.
that's what made her famous. And so she did a TED talk about this and it made her famous, but she talks about absolutely everything. And she has got associations with Google in terms of Google Mind, in terms of CGI. She's got relationships with all sorts of different people. So I like listening to her and I particularly like it for my daughter who's in school right now, because she can learn about all these different things and how they came about, and really kind of learn different concepts that come into place. But yeah, for me, I've read since my dad was a Fleet Street journalist, so our house looked like a library when I was growing up. And
Yeah.
and so I've always continuously read and learned about different things. And I'm always interested in what is the most innovative and disruptive thing in the marketplace, and how is it impacting the overall journey of what's going on. I also look at things about new methodologies, obviously competitive intelligence as well, things like Green Book, through Lenny and other kind of friends in the industry, MRII things, Market Research Council papers that they're putting out there. So I'm continuously learning as I'm building, and I think you have to do that. I think it's really important, and particularly in the world where of disinformation that we live in right now, it's important to look at background sources on everything that you're reading in order to make sure and validate that it's true. And so not just relying on Fox News to give you the answers that you want, or CBS, or any of the other channels, because everybody has their own bias.
Yep.
And because everybody has their own bias, you kind of need to read everything. And therefore, it's about being continuously engaged.
Yeah, I totally agree. And apologies for distractions from my
Oh, the
here.
dog is very cute.
Edmund Fitzgerald. Usually keep him
And a great name too.
air. I'm from the Midwest, so Rock of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's a great song. So uh,
Yeah.
cool. All right. So Robert, you know that this is the Rock and Roll Research Podcast. You know that this is what I really want to know. Speaking of music, like the Rock of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
So what I really want to know is, and this is the thing that I've explicitly said, please don't tell me your answers ahead of time. I love to be surprised. So you're stranded on a desert island, right? You've got three albums of your choosing to keep you company for the rest of your days. What are them?
So I would say the first one would be the Prodigy Electronic Punks.
Oh yeah, yeah, very cool
Um,
choice.
Mainly because it's such an upbeat album with it has all the elements that I like in things. So it's got a little bit of techno, it's got a little bit of rock going on, um, and it's just something that would just keep you energized.
For sure.
I think aside from that, you're going to need something to relax to and sit down to. So um, my parents were very much into opera, so I would say Verdi's Rigoletto would be the piece that I would listen to apart from that.
Very nice
Um, and
choice.
then the last one would probably be Armin van Buuren Tomorrowland,
I'm not.
which is from the Tomorrowland Festival, which was from 2024.
Oh,
Um, Pure um, cheesy techno.
yeah.
But lots of anthems included in that. It has little bits of opera. It has uh, little bits of noises and different things. But there's so many different sounds and rhythms and other things. I think that would kind of keep you going. And it's a long album as well.
Yeah.
Um, so those would be, and there are other artists that appear on it. So those would be it. I think as a second, I would probably say um, one of the albums by Queen. I would definitely be a close second on all of those. I just think that the variation in Freddie's voice, and the different styles of music that Queen had, I think again would be something that would kind of sustain me on the island. So that's four, I'm afraid, but
It's okay. It's okay. I'll take the Queen one as an honorable mention. Now I will say, see, this is where I have quantitative data, right? So I've got 150 plus episodes. I have over
yeah,
400 mentions And I want to congratulate you because the first three are all new to the podcast. So that's kind of exciting, right? Queen has
Exciting.
been mentioned a few times. So you've got some company there, but great choices, really unique, interesting choices. And I'm going to
Thank
check
you.
out that third one because I'm not familiar with that one. Tomorrowland one. So cool stuff.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, Robert, this has been a great chat. I'm so glad we were able to extend the conversation that we started back in Washington, D.C. It's been great getting to know you. Super cool stuff. So next time we chat, hopefully it will be in Chicago, perhaps over a pint. So thanks so much for joining the podcast. Talk soon and rock and roll.
Rock and roll.